The Sooners dominate West Virginia. They're back in the win column. We'll talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Gametime. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday on the KREF Sports app from 9 to noon. And Josh, the Oklahoma Sooners got a convincing, emphatic, dominating, impressive, whatever adjective you want to throw out it, 59-20 win over the West Virginia Mountaineers. It was an incredible performance from start to finish.
It was, yeah. It was, I think what we expected, or at different stages of this season, felt like this Oklahoma team was. I mean, it was a complete performance for Oklahoma, what they did offensively, defensively. You know, the one touchdown drive, the second one for West Virginia, was sort of penalty aided, and maybe there's a little room for debate about how you feel about a penalty or two on that drive. So I even almost chalk that drive up as a field goal that you gave up defensively. Obviously, it is what it is. You gave up the touchdown there, but that's a long ways to get to say that I thought it was a really complete offensive performance for all of the knocking, and at times deservedly so, for Jeff Lebby. When Jeff Lebby and Dillon Gabriel and these guys offensively do what they did on Saturday night versus West Virginia, well, that means we get to sit here, John, and say, tip of the cap. It was, especially offensively, a tremendous night for Oklahoma.
Yeah, Jeff Lebby came in seeming like a man on a mission. Dillon Gabriel was incredible. I mean, 8 total touchdowns, setting an Oklahoma record. Nearly 500 yards of total offense, was incredible all game long. And he started 4 of 8 in this game and looked kind of erratic. And you're like, is this the Dillon Gabriel we're going to get? But he was impressive with his legs, and became the third Sooner to rush for 10 touchdowns in a season in forever, joining Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray. So again, another impressive feat. Also passing Colt Brennan for 10th all time in the passing yardage list. So just an impressive performance for Dillon Gabriel in a game where, West Virginia comes out and they march right down the field on an 8-play, 75-yard drive, take a little over 4 minutes off the clock. And we're like, oh, here we go again. The Sooners respond with their own 8-play, 75-yard drive, taking a little more than 2 minutes off the clock. And at that point, or after that point, the Oklahoma Sooners defense just completely took over the game. The offense could not be stopped. In the game, the offense they only punted 3 times, and then they had the kneel down at the end. They had 644 yards of total offense, which is the most that they collected this season. The previous high was 642 against Arkansas State in week 1. That just goes to show just how incredibly impressive this performance was. And that's including a fourth quarter in which, they were just trying to run out the clock at that point. Back against Arkansas State, they were letting Jackson Arnold throw the football. They were still kind of running their offense a little bit and, trying to continue to score points and put up yards. Not in this one. They kind of took the pedal out, or the foot off the pedal in the fourth, and just were run heavy. And that's where a couple of their punts came, was as they were just trying to milk the clock at that point. So a dominating win for the Sooners.
One thing that jumps out at me as I peruse the box score right here with you right now is, listen to these long runs for West Virginia, okay? Now, keep in mind, West Virginia coming out of this game, they were higher than this going in, but coming out of it right now, they're number 7 nationally running the football. So West Virginia, very, very good with Donaldson, with Green, with others running the football. The long for Donaldson on the night, a rush of 14. Jaheim White of 15. Garrett Green of 15. 13, another long run there. That's it, right? There's no 25-yard rush there. There's no 37-yard rush there. There's not a back-breaking 62-yard touchdown run there. You held West Virginia in check defensively to 4.3 yards per rush, which, okay, on the surface is like, okay, is that pretty good? Is that just okay? Well, they average right at about 5 yards per carry. So Oklahoma, John, I thought did a good job for the most part defensively a lot of times throughout this game on early downs to set itself up to where what could they do? They could force Garrett Green to be a passer, and he wound up 10 of 27 for a $154 through the air. So the game plan for Oklahoma defensively, they really executed that portion of the game too.
And that number you read for Garrett Green, that 15-yard run, really highlights how well Oklahoma did against him defensively, because that was the big key, right? Contain Garrett Green. Don't let him become a runner. Don't let him escape the pocket, and make sure you limit his damage. And they pretty well did that. I mean, he had the 15-yard run, but other than that, what's he rushed for? He ran for, I think it was like 10 in total. He had 10 carries for like 27 yards. I don't have the box score. It refreshed on me, so I'm not able to look at it just yet. But you take that 15-yard run away, then on the other nine carries, Oklahoma pretty much bottled them up. And that was hugely impressive. Again, we saw this team last year not be able to stop a running quarterback to save their life. Well, this year they've been really, really good. And again, last year we saw what Garrett Green was able to do to him. This year, a completely different story, from the defensive line, rushing their lanes like they're supposed to the linebackers being able to account for them with the speed that they've got, and guys like Jaron Kanik and Kip Lewis, and the heads up play, the tenacity that a guy like Danny Stutzman plays with, Kobe McKenzie as well. This group just played a really solid defensive game. Got a couple interceptions late in the game, but ultimately it was just, they played sound football. It wasn't a lot of splash plays. Yeah, they had some tackles for loss, but no sacks. Some pressure, not a ton of pressure, but ultimately it was just sound defensive football. And on a day where your offense was just rolling, that's all you needed. You didn't need the defense to go out there and win you a football game, because your offense was so incredibly impressive.
So let's ask the question that's on the big board. If you're watching along with us on YouTube, if you're listening to your team every single day, appreciate you out there as well. Did the Sooners exercise their demons in this game?
It sure looks like it. They sure looked a lot like the team that we saw the first 5 weeks of the season in that win over Texas. They looked like a dominant offensive unit that played complementary football. The defense did what it needed to do to get stops. I mean, after that opening touchdown drive, the defense basically shut them down until the final drive of the second quarter. I mean, it was like punt, a couple different turnovers on downs, another goal line stand where West Virginia had the ball first and goal at the 3, and they pick up 2 yards, but that's it. That's all they get. And everybody's making plays down there at the goal line. Again, it's becoming just commonplace where you get first and goal inside the 5, and I still feel pretty confident Oklahoma's going to get a stop. West Virginia got the ball on a Gavin Freeman muff punt, and Oklahoma held them to 8 yards and forced a field goal try that was missed. So, I mean, to me, yes, they exercised the demons. This is the Oklahoma Sooners team we expected to see the last 2 weeks against Kansas, against Oklahoma State. Turnovers, penalties, miscues, that all prevented Oklahoma from staying undefeated. They bounced back in a big way this week.
Now you got to go back it up, right? It did feel like a rebirth of sorts for Oklahoma, with one item that we'll talk about later, some chants that broke out. It was sort of a spiritual rebirth of sorts inside Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. But the football itself, it was too, right? Just the way Oklahoma played was the brand of football that we expect from this program, and that this team led us to believe they were capable of bringing to the table week in and week out. So they'll get measured by, can they do this the next 2 weeks and beyond? And based on what happened elsewhere, with Oklahoma State falling flat on its face against UCF, which we said was a possibility could happen, that UCF could win that game. I don't know that any of us thought it was going to play out like that. So Houston, I mean, are they going to be able to beat Oklahoma State? Probably not. I mean, the schedule looks like on paper Oklahoma State would win the next 2, but all of a sudden the pathway to a Big 12 championship. TCU, it was lopsided for a little bit. It tightened up late versus Texas. So I'm just saying, right? Go play the next 2 games and let the other dominoes fall where they might. And who knows, maybe Oklahoma plays its way back into a Big 12 championship and we can reconfigure how we feel about the success of this season for Oklahoma. But the bottom line is, whether all those other items happen around you, the first thing is the first thing. And that's more of this from Oklahoma, because they did get back to, John, playing like we know this team is capable of.
They absolutely did. We'll talk more about what we liked from the Oklahoma Sooners 59-20 win over West Virginia coming up here after the break. And if you're looking for last-minute tickets and the best deals, go to Gametime. You can go right now. Log in, set up an account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off, and you can get great tickets even to this week at BYU. If you're making the trip to Provo and you don't have your tickets yet, go to Gametime. I'm looking at section 123 in the end zone, row 21, $35 in Provo with a beautiful mountain view. Like, wow, picturesque. That's the view that the hotel is going to upcharge you on because you're getting that mountain view. Over at Gametime, you get it for $35. Okay, you don't want to sit in the end zone. You're looking sideline maybe. Okay, we're looking at section 131, row 28, $37. Some great options available for you if you're making that trip to Provo. Go check it out. They've also got tickets available still for TCU on Black Friday the week after. Go to Gametime, download the app wherever you get your apps, whether it's the Apple Store, the Google Play Store. You can even check it out online as well on your web browser at gametime.co. But use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. All right, Josh, let's talk more about what we liked. Maybe there might be a few things we disliked, but we can talk about that as we go. But what was something that stood out to you that you just loved about this performance?
They did it start to finish. They didn't let up. I mean, there was a relentless punishing. We got to get this frustration out in nature about it from Oklahoma. And I like that Oklahoma came out with that type of approach at home that, look, enough is enough, right? And we're sick of getting pushed around. And now all of a sudden, inside Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, we're going to do that. Obviously, individually, what Sawchuk did was really good on the ground. That has continued to be an end of season, big time positive storyline for Oklahoma, that, he is coming back into his own in terms of sort of what we saw in the bowl game to close last season, and then just didn't see for week upon week upon week. And a lot of that, again, was health, right? Mm-hmm. But then there was some seemingly tentative runs out there at times. Just didn't look like he had the same burst about him. Okay, it's back now. And that's one thing I liked. And then, of course, take it away on the man that has the chant after him.
Yeah. Stoops, Drake Stoops, man, has an incredible day. A week ago in Bedlam, had an incredible day. 12 catches, 130 something yards. I can't remember exactly, but set career highs in receptions and yards last week. Comes back this week, sets career highs in yards and touchdowns, has 10 catches, 164 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I highlighted this over on our Locked On Sooners Twitter account. But in his first 5 games of the season, Drake Stoops had 25 catches, 202 yards, and 4 touchdowns. In his last 5 games of the season, this is basically since the Texas game and beyond, 37 receptions, 489 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He's been the most consistent player the Sooners have had this year, but so much of what they were trying to do with Drake Stoops early in the season was in the short passing game, the screen game, the quick out, like we saw on the 4th and 3 or the 4th and 5 last week against Oklahoma State. But where he's really thrived, especially in the last couple of weeks, is in that intermediate part of the passing offense, in the 10 to 20 yards. And he's just eating teams alive right now in that vein. I mean, over the last 2 weeks, he has 22 receptions and well over 300 yards or around 300 yards of receiving and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's been incredible. A great performance, and keep feeding him until a team is able to show you that they can shut him down. Continue to feed him. And what was also really, really great to see is a bounce back game from Nick Anderson, who had over 100 yards receiving on the day, had several big plays. He had 4 catches, 119 yards, 29.8 yards per attempt. And then also in the passing game, we got an Austin Stogner sighting. What we've been asking for weeks is, I don't know if it was, okay, now we're going to finally make it a point to throw it to Austin Stogner, or if he just leveled up his game, but it came together where he had 4 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. You need everybody on offense contributing. You can't have somebody that's just a player out there that nobody has to account for. You've got to be able to make everybody accountable. And they did a great job of getting him the ball. But all in all, man, you can't say enough about Drake Stoops' game. What he said earlier in the week about him taking a lot of pride in the University of Oklahoma, taking a lot of pride in his work, saying there was still a lot to play for, and then going out and having a performance like that. If the dude wasn't already legendary status because of the story, he's really cemented it in the last couple of weeks with his production. I mean, we've known he was good, but what he's done the last couple of weeks is elite level production. Mike Houck put it out. The Oklahoma communications director put it out there. The last 2 weeks, nobody has more catches and more touchdowns than Drake Stoops. Right now, nobody has more catches, more touchdowns in the Big 12 than Drake Stoops. You're looking at a player that is going to battle for potentially a first team all conference selection if he continues to play the way he's playing.
The Burlsworth, right, is the walk-on, former walk-on award. He's going to have a great chance to win that. He'd be right in the mix for it. You touched on the career highs. I mean, 298 receiving yards over the past 2 games is the number.
Crazy.
Crazy. And here's another interesting note that we didn't mention. He's the first OU receiver with at least 164 receiving yards since CeeDee Lamb in 2019. So obviously, when you're in that type of company, some special things are happening. And how about on the 60-yard touchdown, which obviously ended with the infamous unsportsmanlike conduct penalty? He didn't want to go down. He didn't want to go down, right? 60 yards, and he's just going to fight and finds his way into the end zone. That was a beautiful singular individual play. You mentioned Nick Anderson. How about Jaden Gibson? A 32-yard touchdown grab was another nice sight.
Yeah, it was great to see him getting an opportunity. You know, we saw him earlier in the year, and he was making plays whenever he got out there. Yeah, he had a couple miscues, had some, a drop or two, had a false start, I think, in one game. But the dude's a good player. You got to get him out on the field. And I think we wanted this last week. We wanted to see them utilize more of their guys and utilize more of that depth and get everybody involved. And it was good to see Jaden Gibson get involved. Great to see Danny Stutzman back in the lineup. I mean, this Oklahoma defense played well without him against Oklahoma State, but they played even better when he was available, because you just have such a cerebral mind out there, someone who can get everybody lined up and just plays with great tenacity and great effort, and is just one of the best players on the field when he's out there. It just makes everybody better around him. So just another great performance for Danny Stutzman, who led the team in total tackles, had a couple tackles for loss as well.
Boy, they're just, when you win 59-20, there's a lot of performances to talk about. We've kind of sort of just scratched the surface on some of the things that Dillon Gabriel did. I mean, to have 8 touchdowns in a game is just insanity.
It's video game numbers.
That's just, Billy Bowman had a really good game. Kendall Dolby did some nice things. Obviously, you touched on Stutzman had a good game. First career start for Robert Spears Jennings. And, oh, by the way, he goes out and gets 7 tackles again. So, yeah, there was a lot of good for Oklahoma in this one, which was nice to see.
Yeah, and we'll continue to break this game down, on this show, on our live show on Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time here on Locked On Sooners YouTube channel. But we're going to talk about a few more of the extenuating things, the more peripheral things that happen in the game here coming up next.
We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up, obviously, about Oklahoma wins and losses, who starts, who sits. And I'm thankful for that connection that we have. Today, I want our chat to be just that little bit more personal. Whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered, my friend. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical. Life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Even ED generics such as Cialis, Viagra, prescriptions, they've got those. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use our code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered antibiotic. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. That's from a customer, ladies and gentlemen. So if you or someone you love would like some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember again to use our promo code Locked On for $20 off your purchase.
So before we get to the reaction to the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty from Drake Stoops or on Drake Stoops, I just got the feeling that this crowd was really into it. And you were there, Josh, you were in person, but on the broadcast, it was the loudest that I can recall a Gaylord family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium crowd being for a home game in quite some time. I mean, even this year when Oklahoma was playing good football, I mean, maybe the Cotton Bowl rivals it, but I mean, for a home game, dude, it was loud and they were into it from start to finish. And maybe the fan base just knew how much they needed to make an impact in this game. And they did. They created a false start early on in the game.
It was a great environment. It was. Obviously, look, it helps when you're moving the football and good things are happening and you're getting stops and it feels like, okay, we're about to run these guys out of Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. That helps, right? It creates, well, I mean, obviously the stakes were nowhere near the same, but it gives you that 08 Texas Tech feel where it's, man, nothing can go wrong. We are pummeling these guys. And that's an exciting thing outside of obviously the first drive for Oklahoma. The rest of it was pretty good. So it had that going for it, John, but then also the game itself, the officiating being what it was in this game on a couple of calls, namely the touchdown drive right before half versus West Virginia, I think kind of started stirring the pot that led obviously to the SEC chant that broke out for Oklahoma. So you had that going on. And then you had the dust ups between the two teams, right? So when you've got kind of all of that together, it creates this perfect storm, this perfect recipe for you had a lively Oklahoma environment, which is great. And I think we're only going to see more of that when the bar continues to get raised by SEC opponents. It was a primetime kick. That helps too, right? You've been waiting for a primetime kick. And oh, by the way, the fan base is frothing at the mouth to see OU play good football again after they lost back-to-back games. So there were a lot of factors that went into it, but I agree with you. It was an awesome night at Memorial Stadium.
And some of it also comes from just belief, believing that your defense can get a stop. And so when that's the case, you're putting more into being a part of helping them make a stop. Maybe in previous years, you didn't necessarily have belief that the defense could get a stop. You hoped you're like, man, they could really use a stop right now. Hopefully we can stop them on 3rd and 15. Oh, we didn't. Okay. We're back to it. But no, like this defense, this team has a defense. They can make stops. They can force 3 and outs. They can force punts. They can force turnovers. They can, have big goal line stands. They can get turnovers on downs. That helps jack up a crowd whenever the defense is on the field, because then they feel like, okay, what we're putting into it right now, it's going to matter because this defense is going to get off the field and get the ball back to our high octane offense.
So let's dive in, right? We've waited a little while, but the SEC chance, it's going to be polarizing to some, right?
Yeah.
But I got the impression that honestly, it sounded very lopsided that the fan base was sort of all in on it. First of all, the crowd was loud with it. Everybody kind of got on board with it for the most part in stadium. But the social media reaction seemed to be that everybody kind of understood that it was directed in jest at the officiating crew. I sort of look at it as we're taking ownership of this. There's only so many unnecessary roughness, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties you can throw on Oklahoma. We're sick of the targeting calls. We're sick of this, you know what, on the way out for Oklahoma. So I kind of took it as that toward the officiating crew. You know, you've been back-to-back weeks, you've had road environments where it's getting chanted at you to make fun of you, right? Going to the SEC. So it was sort of like, hey, taking it back, but also throwing it into the face and just pointing out to the officiating crews out there. Yes, the Oklahoma fan base does understand that this might not totally be on the up and up on occasion.
Yeah, especially when you have, you mentioned the pass interference that had happened on Kenai Walker on that last drive of the first half. Listen, you can call it, you could not call it. It certainly wasn't an egregious, defensive pass interference, not like it was against Drake Stoops in Bedlam. That kind of got the ball started. And then the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty happens against Drake Stoops. And if I'm not mistaken, on the broadcast, I feel like I heard Drake Stoops says, he's like, F it. I don't care. F it. I don't care. Like, no, he was just fired up to play too. And I think part of that passion, that energy fired up the fan base as well. And yeah, man, if you're going to troll the Big 12 and troll the the Big 12 officials with the SEC chant, man, I'm all in. No, that's the beauty of college football, is the trolling aspect of college football. It sucks when it comes against you, but when you get an opportunity to do a little bit of trolling in your home stadium, that's good times right there. So I'm all on board. I saw a few detractors, and in general, I would not be about the SEC chant. Like, I'm not going to sit there and chant SEC if Georgia goes on to win the national title. Nah, screw those guys. Oklahoma's about winning national titles. But in this instance, in this context, loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. And that's the part, the trolling of the Big 12 officials, the dynamic and the energy in the crowd that really has me ready for SEC football, man. Like, that was a crowd, that was an environment that you look forward to seeing next season in 2024 when Alabama rolls into town or Tennessee rolls into town. That's the environment you got to have.
Oh yeah. And you'll get it. It will be that. And oh, by the way, Oklahoma is never going to forget its roots and chant the SEC as some sort of moral victory that somebody else went and won something. It will never be that. So for anybody that has that fear, it will never be that at Oklahoma. Never.
No.
And it wasn't that way on Saturday night either.
No, but I can imagine that if Oklahoma is able to get to the Big 12 title game, or Texas is in the Big 12 title game, and either one of those teams wins it, or if both are there, there's going to be quite a few SEC chants ringing out from the Big 12 championship game. They might have to put a little dump button on the broadcast to try and mute some of that, do a little WWE muting for that environment. Brett Yormark will not be too thrilled with SEC chants on his grandest stage. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Again, we'll talk more about the game, what transpired. We'll talk Jimbo Fisher on our Monday Night Live show and what happened with Texas A&M and how might that impact Oklahoma's recruiting, the transfer portal, all of that. We'll do that on our live show Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. So be subscribed to Locked On Sooners and hit that notification bell to let you know when those new episodes drop and when the live show jumps off. So be a part of it. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh on Ref. Follow myself at John 9 Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners, and Locked On Sooners podcast on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, wherever your socials are. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.